And we are back, and it is time for the ElseViews. This is, of course, the section of the show where we talk about the movies, TV shows, video games that we've been playing, music we've been listening to, whatever, and we share them with you. Now, I'm going to go first just because mine's going to be really quick. I've seen the latest, and I realize I've only not seen like maybe 4 or 5 of the DC animated movies. But this is the latest one. This is Gotham by Gaslight. This is the straight up Elseworlds tale of what Gotham City would have been like in Victorian London or in Victorian England. Which you might think, oh, great, British Batman. No, everyone in here is American, yet it is in that style of like it's all the Victorian times. So right there, I'm like, couldn't have cast like one Englishman in here in a lead role, or an English accent where it's not just it's essentially the Harvey Bullock character, the deputy to Jim Gordon. Oh, he's one that you're going to do not only English, but do the stereotypical Scottish and all that, he's going, basically just going, top of the morning and all that stuff. Actually, I think it's more Irish, but whatever. So basic plot point of this, if you don't know, because I don't know how well it's based on the Gotham by Gaslight story, from the comics, but you are in here, you're in, this time period, and all of a sudden they have Jack the Ripper, and he is murdering whores and women of ill repute and all that. And Batman,
proper term is sex worker.
Yes, true. Well, but no, there's other types in there. Like
I know, classically they were called different things, but
yeah. But no, in here it's like in there, like later on he kills he murders a nun who her only crime is the fact that she runs an orphanage, and it's like all above board, like she's helping, doing nunly duties of helping the needy, and she gets knifed and all that stuff. It's cool to see because of the fact that we get such an interesting take on classic DC, classic Batman characters. For example, Poison Ivy's in here, or I should say Pam Isley is in here, and I believe her burlesque character is actually named Ivy or something like that. And then she's, spoiler alert, one of the victims. But you get Selena Kyle. There's a nice little Easter egg to Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and the third Robin.
Tim Drake would be the third Robin.
He's unnamed, but I'm assuming it's Tim Drake, as they're little orphans and stuff. So much so even playing to the fact that Jason being the hot-headed one, saying it like they're a boy band or something. I don't know why. But, I mean, it's a really enjoyable movie. I mean, it's a little slow to get into because there is quite a bit of setup, and it's only, an hour and a half long, more closer to the hour and a half than the 2-hour mark. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. Now, with the like I do with all DC movies, I did this last month with Batman and Harley Quinn. The child rating, I would say probably 12-year-old and higher would be where I would say it. And I think it's the first time I'm actually giving an age, but it's mainly because there's a lot of swearing. Well, not a lot, but there's quite a bit of swearing. And then with how they shoot some scenes, like there's a scene in here where Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, meets up with, and I use the air quote, meet up with Selena Kyle, and you see her as she's going behind the screen changing thingy. I forget what that's called. And she's got the blanket around, or the sheets around her, and they're going down to you see her back and all that stuff, and she's going down basically to butt crack, and then it goes down, and see it fall as she's walking behind there, assuming that she is naked. And then there's some of the violent stuff does get a little, especially with the sound. The Foley work is great on here with the murdering of the women, to hear, not that I would know, but how realistic it sounds. But then that could be a little bit much for a kid.
And so one of the things that I commonly complain about of the current state of DC's direct-to-video cartoons is that it seems to be leaning more and more mature, risque, over sexualizing characters and stuff. But when it comes to an Elseworlds type story like this one, it makes sense in this.
Yeah.
Because this is one, how the book really was to begin with. The book was by Brian Augustine and Mike Mignola, who people would know from Hellboy. It was always a mature title. It was never meant for young kids. So doing an adaptation of that, I expect them to go in that direction. It's more of the stuff that feels like a continuation of the Batman, the animated series universe.
Yeah.
As they try to do more stuff that's supposed to be in relation to that. And that leaning so mature, that's the part that gives me the heebie-jeebies. You're just discovering that cartoon series for the first time, and it skews at a certain age range, and then all of a sudden it shoots up to PG-13. It's tough for me to say that that's the right decision to make. But in this, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to see what the list of the movies is, after this, because like I watched it through Movies Anywhere, and they did what's the next one coming up, and it's Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. It seems like what they're doing now, they're sort of getting away with, or moving away from, well, they're based on the Justice League movie or Justice League TV show, or the continuation of Batman the Animated Series. Like the Batman and Harley Quinn one was a continuation, but I think that was more because of the fact that it was Bruce Timm wanting to tell or was it Bruce Timm or was it Paul Dini?
It's Bruce Timm.
Bruce Timm wanting to tell a story in that universe. It seems like they're going more into, let's use these characters and tell an interesting story, but not something that's hardcore tied to the like we got to stick to our storyline here with like Son of Batman and Justice League War, and the Flashpoint Paradox, even where we've got the same voice actors doing Batman. The interesting part for me is the voice cast that they have in here from doing the voice. I don't know if you remember the show Limitless. That
I didn't watch it.
The female lead in there, she plays Selena Kyle.
Jennifer Carpenter, she was the sister on Dexter.
Yeah. John DiMaggio, he's the one that, like, I mean, it's like also like he's the one who's doing the Irish accent, but I mean, it's John DiMaggio, for crying out loud, who's playing Chief Bullock. I mean, everyone in here, it seems really great. The one that threw me was Scott Patterson. He was on Gilmore Girls. He played Luke Danes in there. From what I remember watching Gilmore Girls, like I didn't really watch a lot. It's all been through watching repeats. Like he sounds like he's doing a completely different voice, but still making it sound natural. But yeah,
I also like how you made the stink about nobody sounds British, and then they have Anthony Stewart Head playing Alfred.
That's the exception here. Him and John DiMaggio are the only two that are, but I mean, I'm talking about, you have a Gotham in Victorian era Gotham City, doing the assumptions that it's all in there because they mention London and they only have the steam train and all that stuff. And you have Jack the Ripper, but yet no one else besides two characters, Chief Bullock and Alfred, speak with an English accent.
I guess it's probably better than getting a cast together that you want to work with and then somebody going all Kevin Costner and dropping in and out of the fucking English accent the entire time.
But no, I mean, it's really good. Honestly, I have to agree with a lot of the, like, from looking on the reception page here on Wikipedia, I have to agree with a few of the people, because I mean, I say a lot, but like I would put it at about, like a 7, 8, 9 out of 10, somewhere right there. I mean, it's really good. I'm honestly excited to see the next two movies. They've got two announced so far. Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, which from watching that trailer, it looks like they're doing like a Grindhouse style movie, and they're using the characters. Again, this is where it's going to contradict myself, but they're using some of the characters that they've established with Assault on Arkham, but it's a whole new voice cast that they got coming up with that. Christian Slater's doing Deadshot. You got Tara Strong doing Harley Quinn, and then Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen. That looks, from what I've seen with that looks really cool as well. So I mean, I'm excited for what they've got. I still have high hopes for the DC animated movies, where I haven't loved every single movie, and we've had holy crap, we've had 30 movies. I've enjoyed them for what they have been. So Corey, a lot of people would say that my review was a futile and stupid gesture, but
and they would be right.
Yeah, and they would be right, but they would not say that it was a review of a futile and stupid gesture.
No, and they would again be right.
Yes, because you're providing us that one.
I am. So, futile and stupid gesture. I was flipping through Netflix, and the new Netflix style is a little annoying, where you go on to any selection and it instantly starts playing you a trailer for whatever the show or movie is that you are potentially going to watch. It just like, it doesn't even give you the option, which is bothersome, especially if you want to leave a Netflix page open on your laptop at work so you can get back to where you were on your lunch break and continue watching the show. But this one kind of caught my eye, and I didn't know exactly what it was about. I saw a lot of people that were playing characters that were familiar to me of real people, but not doing a great job of it. And I'm like, what is this thing all about? A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which I guess is made as a Netflix original, is by David Wayne from The State, from Stella, from what are the camp movies?
Red Hot American Summer.
White Hot American Summer. And also, he's done a lot of stuff. He's the director of this. It is a movie about Doug Kenny. Now, Doug Kenny, you hear the name and you probably aren't familiar with it, but I'm pretty goddamn sure you're familiar at least with some of his work. Doug Kenny went from going to Harvard and working on the Harvard Lampoon to establishing with his friend at the time, the National Lampoon magazine. They left Harvard. They both decided to do this magazine together. And from that, National Lampoon got very, very popular. Doug wrote a couple of movies, the first of which was Animal House, and the second of which was Caddyshack. So if you've ever seen Doug, you've probably only seen him one time, and it was in Animal House. And it was in the rousing speech that was given when they've all kind of gotten beat up and defeated, and they're going to be kicked out of school. And it's right before they go and they take over the parade the next day. Doug Kenny is the one who says, "What are we supposed to do, you asshole?" And is the one who leads the people in the parade, that leads the band down the blind alley that just cuts off, and the whole band goes following him along and then crashes into the wall as he sneaks out. That's it. That's the only time that I've ever seen Doug, and probably the only time that I've ever actually heard him talk. But Doug Kenny was very prolific in the writing that he did, and he created two of the most beloved comedies of all time, most quoted, most watched on cable. Animal House was incredibly popular when it came out. Caddyshack came out right after Airplane, and so didn't hold up as well compared to that. And there's a scene in this when Doug goes to see it, and he's like, my fucking movie is going to tank now. This is what people are going to want. So it's interesting to see this guy who has made stuff that is still like some of the funniest movies of all time, kind of kicking himself for not being something else. But in this, Doug is played by Martin Mull as the narrator, and played by Will Forte as Doug when he's in college, up through his years working as the National Lampoon head writer and editor and everything. And there's this really great moment where Martin is pointing out some of the actors who are playing other characters in this. And he's like, yeah, I know some of these people don't look like the people as you know them, but do you think I look like Doug Kenny? Do you think Will Forte looks like a 27-year-old me? Do you think Will Forte looks 27? And it's just like these moments of they're not doing a good job of representing these people as who they are, but just doing a fun job of representing them in this movie. One of the best casting choices to me was Joel McHale plays Chevy Chase.
Nice.
Which is just awesome. But what I didn't know is that most of the people who went and started in the first season of Saturday Night Live all worked at the National Lampoon when they were doing recordings. I knew that they did recordings as the Lemmings. I didn't know that they were all basically stolen by Lorne Michaels to go over, including some of the writers and stuff, were stolen from the National Lampoon to go start Saturday Night Live. And so there's a bit of contention when Gilda Radner and John Belushi and Chevy Chase and all these people leave. And Doug's like, what the fuck? You just stole my entire fucking group and pulled them over their show. And Lorne's like, hey, you know, you should come do some writing for us. That would be really great. And he's like, fuck you. And he just walks out. It's not a happy movie. And I'll start out by the fact that there's a reason why Doug wasn't involved in Caddyshack 2. There's a reason why nobody should have been involved in Caddyshack 2. But shortly after Caddyshack came out, Doug died. And there's some contention as to, did Doug kill himself, or did Doug just get a little too fucking high and accidentally fall off a cliff? I've always kind of understood it as that he killed himself, but I couldn't tell you. All I know is that the journey that this movie goes on is really good, and everybody in it does a great job. And there's some fantastic people all the way through the thing. Domhnall Gleeson, who I know from being in the most recent Star Wars movies. He's the more official Imperial guy that's always fighting about who should be in charge, him or Kylo Ren.
He's also
unrecognizable in this.
Yeah, he's also one of the 3 actors that you see in Ex Machina. He was one of Ron's older brothers in the Harry Potter series.
Oh, now the Harry Potter thing I should have realized, but I haven't seen Ex Machina, so I didn't recognize him from that.
Yeah, he's not the twins. If you go by the
the eldest brother, one who graduates,
kind
of right away. Yeah, I think they go to his wedding or something. Yeah, no idea. But Carlo Gallo from I've seen her a lot on Bones and stuff. Like, I can't remember everybody, but Thomas Lennon, a few people from the state show up in this. Kerry Kinney shows up in it. Natasha Lyonne. It's just such a stellar cast of people doing great jobs with these parts. Ed Helms is in here. Seth Green. It's so cool to watch, to recognize who they're playing, and to see this story kind of go along. The perspective of Doug Kenny is kind of a broken individual. Like, he's constantly fighting for acceptance by his parents, who he thinks don't respect him at all. The fact that we're getting the narration of him as a much older person that he never actually becomes, with Martin Mull doing it, is really good, and is an interesting payoff of how they explain it all at the end. It is just such a really neat little movie that again, like a lot of the stuff that is direct to Netflix, I would have never seen this in the theater. I would have never known it existed if it didn't just show up in the list of choices of Netflix originals to watch. And this is kind of the magic of what Netflix is doing, is I'm watching things that I wouldn't have interest in otherwise. Not necessarily like no interest. I'm still not watching a ton of their sci-fi stuff because I'm not huge on the sci-fi, but I'm more likely to pick up something randomly because it's there, because it's available, and it's already part of my subscription. But this is a fun little, not documentary, but drama about a time and interesting things, and to see the people who were involved in the National Lampoon and see the people who were involved in the making of these movies. There was a movie that was about Peter Sellers' life, starring Jeffrey Rush, who did a really good job playing Peter Sellers. And I think it was an HBO original movie. This probably about 10, 15 years ago. And it was that same sort of thing, is it played around with the narration a lot. It would trick you with things. There was points where you could tell that Peter would feel uncomfortable with how something actually went. And so he would retell the ending to make himself look better, because he's basically a narcissist. And so it's like, you'd see the scene, well, no, he should be getting fucking chewed out right now. But he would replace the character that's arguing with him with himself, because that's the other thing about Peter Sellers. He could play anything. He could play anyone. He would be in a movie in multiple parts, and people would like not necessarily pick up on it. So it's like his wife or girlfriend would be arguing him, and you'd see her yelling at him, and then all of a sudden she would change her mind. But the reason she would change her mind is because suddenly Peter Sellers is playing her too, and being very forgiving all of a sudden. I loved how they used the narration in that. I love how they use the narration in this. it's a great little flick. I highly recommend it.
It's one of those things that it's been on my list to go watch. But yeah, I don't know. I've heard mixed things on it. I love the poster because the poster is, I believe, the first issue. It's a redo of the first issue of the National Lampoon, where you got Will Forte as Doug Kenny standing there, and someone's holding a gun to his head, and it says, "If you don't watch this movie, we'll kill Will Forte."
Yeah, and the original cover was, "If you don't read this magazine, we'll shoot this dog," and they reenact that in the film. It's a lot of fun. I don't know what people would expect from this. One, I wouldn't have expected this movie to even exist. It's like I wasn't sitting there going, "Oh yeah, someone should do a movie about Doug Kenny." I wouldn't have argued that they shouldn't, but it's just to see it get made and to see what they did to differentiate it from just being a straight up, like, we're not trying to do a well-made, well-represented thing. The characters being played by actors who don't really look anything like them, they call themselves out on it. I think that adds to the charm because they get better actors who wouldn't necessarily look like the people they're portraying, but you still get great representation because of it. Is that a little bit like having a bunch of white people play Asian characters in a movie? No, it's nothing like that. And thank God for it. But I can see if you're like, oh, well, I'd like to see someone playing Chevy Chase who actually looks like Chevy Chase. Yeah, there's a case to be made for that. But it's so much funnier that it's Joel McHale.
Yeah, and I would honestly say if you're really wanting to watch a biopic about National Lampoon, I would probably say, watching something like Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant, Dead would be a smarter choice or a better choice, because I think that's, where them doing a biopic, not paying homage to National Lampoon by National Lampooning his life and stuff like that. But yeah, there's like, just to piggyback off of the casts and stuff on here, I mean, there's a lot. Like, one of them stood out for me just because, British watcher myself, a lot of British TV shows. Matt Lucas is in here. He plays Tony Hendra. But yeah, there's a lot of these people in here that are, Chris Redd is in here. He's on SNL this season. Really, it looks really cool. I think I'll probably end up watching it probably this weekend. There are some choices that, yeah, they're weird, but it makes sense. Like Rick Glassman, who was on Undateable, plays Harold Ramis. I'm like, where it's like, yeah, they don't look alike, but I would see him doing that.
Yeah, he's got the right presence for it.
Yeah, Corey, you've done it again. You've turned me on to a new thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you're like me and you scan through Netflix too long looking for something to watch instead of just choosing something, knowing what you want to watch right away, this gives you an opportunity to just say, oh, well, but yeah, there's this one thing I heard about, and I could have gone either way on it. I had no idea what I was in for going in, and the more I watched it, the more appealing it became.
Awesome.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.